Hey guys, it's Graham. What's cracking? And I'm going to say right out of the gate, don't get excited about the book that is on the thumbnail for this video because it's not very good. I wanted it to be, but alas, it is not. Dragon America by Mike Resnick. I don't think this was the first Resnick that I ever read. Maybe it was? I don't know. He also wrote that Weird West series with Doc Holliday, and those were all incredible, but I read those later on. Dragon America, I was kind of expecting a treatment that was on par with Temrare by Naomi Novik, but not only was the concept nearly as well explored, it was not nearly, he did not a good job with it. The prose didn't stack up either. Um, you could read the prose of a Naomi Novik book and feel like you were reading a very close cousin of Jane Austen. She got the voice and the tone down, among other things. Whereas Resnick was just a guy writing about an idea that he had. That idea happened to be about dragons in America, as one might guess. Basically, George Washington is like, we need an advantage against the Redcoats. Let me go get my homeboy Daniel Boone and say, can you go get us an advantage against the Redcoats? And Daniel Boone's like, I'll go into the interior of America, for America, and I'll find dragons. So dragons exist in this world. They're born with wings, but they eventually get too big and heavy for them, and they shed the wings, and so they're just these like big, giant, wingless megafauna, effectively. And Daniel Boone goes on this voyage, and he's got some friends, and they stomp around and they look for some stuff, and they eventually come up with a solution to get some dragons and get them back to the East Coast before America has a big battle with Britain. And the gimmick is that they realize that the adults in the herd, like these dragons can't be tamed or brought under saddle or controlled by people or whatever, but they realize that the adults in the herd are highly protective of the young. Effectively, it being like the maternal instinct, amongst the cows, the cow dragons, is very, very strong, and then the bulls go where the cows go. So they end up getting some of these baby dragons harnessed, and they're able to like fly them and ride them in and steer them and stuff. And so they take a couple of babies and they ride them toward the coast, and the moms and the dads come, and the dragons help rout the British. It's like there is nothing at the end that's any more surprising than the initial premise as described in the back flap. And I thought, well, it's kind of a pity because there's a great opportunity to tell like a vibrant and colorful story against this backdrop. Give us an American Revolution fantasy. That got me thinking. I asked Grok a couple of days ago, like, hey, can you give me, a bunch of American Revolution fantasy novels? Because I just figured it was just one of those genres out there. And the pickings were pretty slim. The only ones that were directly about fantasy in the American Revolution was the Traitor to the Crown series by C.C. Finley, which I read last summer and reviewed in succession leading up to the 4th of July. And those were really well done. Like the first one, I probably gave it 3 stars, and then I gave 4 and 4 to the next two. Very well executed. But it surprised me that there weren't more in that vein, just because it seemed like it was really ripe for the taking. But Graham, you wrote Engines of Liberty. Like that doesn't really count. Like the seed of that is based in the American Revolution, but it happens 200 years later and in an alternate timeline. It's basically like the only thing alternate about it is that the revolution failed in the 1770s, and in the 1980s they had a rematch. So it's not quite a pure exploration of that concept. For me, again, I've worked 42 hours in 3 days, and only because it's barely legal to do so. Memorial Day kicks off a month-long stretch of America-themed celebrations in my house. the thing that I love about Christmas is that as soon as Thanksgiving is done and put away, you get a month of Christmas celebrations. But it seems like for the 4th of July, it's like, well, it's July, and then 3 days later, like that era of it is over. When I lived in Utah, it was kind of cool because you didn't quite put all the decorations away. 3 weeks later, on the 24th, you'd have Pioneer Day, which was almost as big in Utah as Independence Day was. So, like, all of that was well and good and cool and everything. You don't have that here, understandably so. Like, Utah is a very Latter-day Saint centric. Well, Utah Day, Pioneer Day is a very Latter-day Saint centric thing. I promise I'm sane. My brain has just been boiled after so much grinding. So what was I saying? Who cares? Nobody does. So I start my festivities in home when Memorial Day kicks off, because it's the more somber of the holidays and it's reflective. And then on June 14th, few people know or observe this, June 14th is Flag Day. And I'll have more to say about that as we get closer. And then that's about the halfway point between Memorial Day and Independence Day, and then you get to Independence Day. I would like to read more revolution themed or revolution set fiction, but especially of the speculative type. It surprised me that there wasn't more of that. There is a handful of comics, and there was one that DC Comics picked up. So back in the middle of the 20th century and as it went on, there were a bunch of smaller comic companies that had middling success, and then, like any other smaller business, they got bought out by a larger one and integrated. And I believe this press was called Quality Comics, and they had a superhero team called the Freedom Fighters. Like, just a very back of the store brand cereal box lineup of characters, like the Human Bomb and Dr. Ray and Doll Man and whatever. Like, but the central figure is Uncle Sam, and the premise is that he's basically superhuman, but his strength is tied to America's fidelity to its founding principles. And it's cheesy, it's hokey and everything, but there have been some comics produced in the last 10 to 15 years with Uncle Sam and the Freedom Fighters as characters, and I've looked up some of the descriptions of them, and they sound like they could be good. Granted, they were mainstream DC Comics within the last 10 to 15 years, and a lot of those have been of dubious quality, so I don't quite know what to expect. But I could see myself sinking my teeth into something like that. I found a website that had image scans of a Freedom Fighters comic from 1976 during America's bicentennial. It's like, okay, cool, I'll try this out. This will introduce me to Uncle Sam and the team. I tried reading it, and holy crap. It's not like, oh, it aged poorly because there's racism jokes. It's just not good. It's not any of that. It's just that it's boring. The dialogue's bad. It's, like I said, it's the back of a store brand box of cereal that's a knockoff of something better. But if there was a serious treatment of it, I could sink my teeth into that. Maybe I'll just have to hunker down and write an actual American Revolution themed piece of fiction. I tried watching that show from AMC called Turn Washington Spies, and there was a lot to recommend it and a lot that I enjoyed, but I've read so much nonfiction around that era, and I get that with narratives you have to do something a little bit different. But I felt like they got too far into the territory of, like, there are more significant things that they were altering just for like the sake of making a TV show, that for somebody who knows the details the way that I do, and I'm not saying that I'm an expert, I'm saying that I'm above average, it could be frustrating to read this, like, well, why would Abraham Woodhull do this, and he didn't know that guy, and this dude didn't die, and that thing didn't actually work, and all of that. Like, it was a great TV show if you don't actually know. And if you watch Gladiator and you know the Roman emperors and everything, it's like, okay, well, this guy wasn't here and that didn't happen and this would have, like, I'm sure it's a similar effect. I enjoy Gladiator because I'm while I do know a fair amount of Marcus Aurelius, and I know what happened with Commodus's succession after Marcus Aurelius died, I know that it didn't happen the way that it did in the movie, and that Maximus was a fictional character. That's fine. Call it a period drama. It's not there to be historical fiction or historical representation. It's just there to be set against the backdrop. Turn was an interesting show, but I do get hung up on the details. Who knows? Maybe I'll try it again down the road. But at the end of the day, if you know of a book that Grok didn't, something that's specifically like a fantasy set against the backdrop of the American Revolution, I'd be thrilled to read it, because I think we could use more of that. I just hope that it is executed well. Anyway, that's it for now. Drive safe. See you out there.